And I've been seeing a few folks having problems with their emergency breakaway switch and wiring. So I'm gonna make a little video on that today. In the last year or so, I've seen a couple Alpines where they've burnt the wiring that runs from the emergency breakaway switch, and the power wire that you see here is blue. And some of these switches you may see black and black, but one of these is going to have a blue power feed wire to it located inside your pin box. And I'm not going to take the cover off, but the connection is inside here. And from this pin box, that blue wire is going to run up. I almost dropped the phone. That would be bad. But it's going to run up through this conduit right here. And we'll open up the hydraulic panel access, and that conduit is going to be way up inside here. And you can see it running right way back there at the back end. That's where that blue wire runs down through. And we'll continue to follow that conduit. And remember, this conduit on my particular Alpine. This is a 2014 3010 RE. My wiring comes from the pin box conduit box, and then runs up back in behind where the reservoir is at. It comes down right here, and it'll run down. You can see right in this area here where my hand is at, the conduit continues to run. And when you look at this blue wire right here, this is the blue wire that's running down to this conduit right here. It runs all the way out to the pin box conduit box and provides power to the emergency brakes from the left-hand side of this breaker. So it is not fused. In other words, it has 12 volts. This blue wire has 12 volts to it all times. Even if you turn the battery switch off, you're still going to have power to that blue wire that's feeding your emergency brake switch. So every trip I make, before I get ready to tow, I take a look, number one, and make sure after I'm hooked up and ready that this breakaway pin is fully seated inside the switch. And I take a look-see at my wires and make sure that there's no chafing. And as you can see, there's no chafing. I've removed the loom just a little bit so that I can actually look at the wires, so we'll put that back on. Okay, and as you can see now, I have the loom is in place. The blue wire, which is the hot wire coming from inside on the non-fused side of the 50 amp breaker, supplies power to the switch. And when this pin gets removed, then it completes the circuit. So the blue wire, which has the incoming 12 volts, now is supplying 12 volts power to the orange wire, which runs back down over here to the pin box itself, and inside it will connect to the brake feed wire that feeds all 4 electric brakes. See if I can give you a little better look-see there. And I've got the covers on and everything, just have the slides extended out, but I'm not going to pull the covers off. But what I'm going to do is we're going to open up this door, and which will give us access to this blue wire down here. And we're going to put an amp meter on this, and we're going to make a couple of measurements. Okay, so what we've done now is we've hooked up my super inexpensive multimeter that also has a DC and an AC amp meter, and we've placed that directly around the blue wire, which sends 12 volts to the 4 brake magnets when the breakaway switch pin is pulled. So as you can see right now, we're drawing no amps. So now we're out here, and we're going to go ahead and pull this breakaway switch out to simulate that the trailer has separated from the truck. We'll come around here and take a look at the amperage draw, and we see 11.8 amps. Each one of those brakes draws 3 to 4 amps. So 4 brakes, 12 amps. So we can see that in fact all 4 solenoids are working by looking at the amperage draw. And right now just feeling that wire to feel if it's hot, which it is not yet. But if you leave this pulled out, if you leave that breakaway switch pulled very long, you are going to heat up this wire. You're going to heat up all 4 of the brake solenoids and the magnets, excuse me, and plus you're going to kill your battery. So you don't want to leave that switch disconnected too long. Try to give you an inside view of the switch with the pin removed from it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take the key, which I have here in my hand, and we're going to reinsert this. And if you look at this key, let me get zoomed back out. If you look at this key, it's the same on both the flat sides. If I try to put the key in like this, it isn't going to fit. So if I turn the key flat or horizontal like so, you see how it easily slides back in to the receptacle, and we've just pushed it back in. Now we're going to take a look and see if we're drawing any amps. Here we are back at the blue wire right here. Have the amp meter hooked up, and as you can see we're drawing no current now, and that's what we want to see. So that little test that I just did is something that I think every trailer owner should do, and you should test those brakes to make sure that they're going to work before you ever begin your tow. I mean, if you just assume things are going to work, then if God forbid, if the trailer were to become separated from your tow vehicle, the only thing that's going to stop that trailer or fifth wheel, whatever you've got behind you, from running all over the place, it's 60 or 70 miles an hour and causing all sorts of damage and probably killing a lot of people, is these emergency brakes coming on. And so we'll wrap this little short video up on the emergency breakaway switch and how to test it, what it does. And if you've never pulled this pin out, you need to do that, and you need to verify that those brakes are actually getting power. If you have an old style magnetic compass, you can have somebody take and pull the pin out of the emergency brake switch here, and you can stand by each one of those brakes right next to the axle, and the minute you pull the switch, the needle on that compass is going to immediately swing and point directly at that brake. And what's causing that is when those solenoids, or I keep saying solenoids, when the brake magnet has power to it, that coil creates an electric magnetic field with a north and a south pole on it, and so that compass is going to swing right to it. So that's another check if you happen to have an old style compass. The only way that you can be absolutely sure that those brakes, of course, on each axle are working is to lift up the tires on each side off the ground, one side at a time, have somebody pull the brake, and then you should not be able to turn the tires on any of the axles at all with the emergency brake switch actuated. If you can, then it means that you have a problem on one axle, or maybe on just one side, maybe on both sides of that one axle, or all 4 axles. And the reference that I made to the what was shown on the amp meter, which was almost 12 amps, again, you have 4 brake magnets, so each one of those brake magnets will draw somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 amps. And when you add all that up, simple math, 3 times 4 is 12, and that'll give you an idea that all 4 of the magnets are in fact receiving power and they're working. It's not going to tell you that the brake shoes are actually making contact. It's not going to tell you if the brakes have grease all over them and things like that. The only way you're going to know with those things, of course, is to pull your tires and pull the hubs off, which you should be doing once a year anyways. So with that, we'll wrap this up, and hopefully someone finds the video useful. It's just a good thing to check that emergency breakaway switch, folks.